we are not safe if we live in a society where people who just take matters into their own hands to the extent that they take people's lives recklessly in the manner that this man did. None of us is safe. Like, not one person is safe when you try to say that any type of lawlessness is something that should be celebrated. Do you understand what I'm saying? Thanks for checking out Culture Proof. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And boy, we got a conversation that we need to have today. We're asking the question, what is a hero? What is, do we know how to define what a hero is? Because there are several stories, that are out today and yesterday that I think are sparking a conversation that we need to have. I'm quite disturbed to see that the arrest of Luigi Mangion has sort of brought out the crazies among us. People are hailing him as some sort of hero, like some sort of, vigilante that has brought about justice. At the same time, yesterday we learned that Daniel Penny was acquitted in the case that he faced as he was defending people on a New York City subway, which I would define that as, having taken heroic action last year. So we're going to talk about that, bring in a little bit of the details, but I don't so much want to focus on all of the details of the case, although I think there are details that need to be discussed.
Right.
I'm often interested in the spiritual implications that are present in the stories that surround headlines. You know what I mean? Like, there's always something that when you look at the headlines, you're like, the way that people are talking about this is concerning. It's crazy. Like, why are people talking about these things in these terms? And even before the man who assassinated Brian Thompson, even before he was captured, even some of the conversations that I was aware of online just disturbed me, that people were like, wait a minute, he's cute. Like, you're reading some of these. I mean, this is what's happening on X, and this is what's happening on TikTok. There are people who are saying that they can't mourn for someone who was so gross in society, even though he was assassinated in broad daylight. And so we want to talk about that. Want to talk about what that says about a culture.
Yeah.
Is there a biblical response that we ought to have to this? And I would absolutely say yes. So we're going to get to that today. But before we do, I want to say a huge thank you to BJU Press Homeschool. They are making it possible for us and other families all across this country to be able to homeschool our kids with confidence that we are not going to be working against our efforts just to educate them. Primarily for the Addisons, we disciple our kids, and we have found that educating them at home is the best way to do that. And so then the question is, so what kind of curriculum do you choose? Just the other day, I had someone reach out to us online and say, hey, what kind of curriculum would you recommend for working families? And I was so grateful to get this type of question, because I was able to say without any doubt that BJU Press Homeschool is going to be perfect for working families that you've got this going on, you've got that going on, and you don't want your child's education to suffer. BJU Press Homeschool, check them out. You've got video teachers, you've got a homeschool hub that's going to keep everything in one place. If you consultants who will help you work through where your kid needs to start. It's almost as if BJU Press Homeschool is designed to help the parents feel less guilt. You can do it. I feel like BJU Press Homeschool is saying to us, and we want to come alongside you and work with you as you follow the leading of the Holy Spirit in the education of your kids. Guys, this is 100% real to us. Okay. Yes, they are the sponsors of the Culture Proof podcast, but we use BJU Press materials, BJU Press Homeschool materials for our kids. We love them. We talk about this inside our home, how much we appreciate what they've put together for families who want to break out of the mold and take seriously their responsibility to disciple and train and equip and educate their kids at home. Your kids will excel and you'll have peace of mind. Check them out today. Go to bjupresshomeschool.com/cultureproof. Don't forget the hyphen, culture-proof. So BJU Press Homeschool/culture-proof. That will be the way that you let them know that the Addisons sent you. Okay, Will the Great. Today we are asking the question, what is a hero? How do we define a hero? And I want to throw this out at you because I feel like if we live in a culture where we have lost the ability to define what a hero is, then we live in a culture where none of us is safe. Not one of us could pretend to be safe if we don't know what heroism is, if we don't know what it looks like for someone to do the right thing in a situation where it could cost him or her everything. And I really think this goes back to not understanding what is right and what is wrong, right? Like when we lose our ability to discern that. In fact, the Bible really refers to that as the perilous times that we would live in, that would be called the last days.
Yeah, definitely. It goes to that, what knowing right from wrong. And I feel like our culture has been groomed for this through entertainment. You know, there's been an exaltation of the villain to where you find yourself cheering for the one who who is evil, you know, and it's like, what am I doing for the Christian? At least it's like, wait, hold on, I'm rooting for the bad guy. Or you have these shows that's like highlighting adultery, and you're like, oh, I kind of want this person to get with this, like, you know, it's like a just a reformation of our minds. Like it's kind of a you know, grooming us to think bad is good and good is bad, you know. And where do we hear that at? You know, in the Bible, evil is good, good is evil. And so we're living in that time right now, and I think it definitely points to that, you know, like you said in the scriptures, where we can't really understand, or we don't know how to gauge evil and what is good. And so, man, you see this with these situations that we're going to talk about today.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I feel like you've just made such an excellent point in talking about how we get to the place where we begin to live counter the word of God and believe that that's the right way to live. And it's through the indoctrination efforts that would be Hollywood and that would be media, where we start to doubt our ability to discern right from wrong. And so we start to think that the wrong is right because in some way that wrong appeals to a personal desire that we have, right? And we've seen this in all sorts of ideologies that have infiltrated the church. We see this in Hollywood in a lot, as you just alluded to, a lot of the remakes of the movies where we are being told that the villain is not who you thought he was or not who you thought she was. And you need to reimagine the villain. You need to rethink the villain, where you have a certain amount of empathy and compassion for the person that is the mass murderer, for the person that destroys the village, for the person that pillages and that kills and that, you know, just wreaks utter destruction on any group of people. And when we begin to pump that into the hearts and the minds of our kids, we mess with their ability to discern what is right and what is wrong. At the very least, you start to call into question whether or not you can judge if a villain is indeed a villain. Right. Because then what you begin to believe is that, well, we should really think about it from his or her perspective.
Right.
But isn't there objective right and objective wrong?
It's like the Robin Hood thing, you know, and that's been around a long time, but it's like, you know, putting up the thieves as being like, oh, man, but they're trying to help poor people.
Come on.
But still a thief. So
that's right.
It's one of those things, and that's been around, but it has increased as we see entertainment and things like that in our day. Man, it has increased.
Yes. And so I want to talk about Luigi Mangione and how his story is kind of being framed in this country. Of course, there are the obvious details, and I want to play some of that so that we can kind of have a conversation around that. A lot of the details sound really sketch to me. I think there's something maybe more than meets the eye. I don't want to be in the camp of just chasing after conspiracies, but I don't want to ignore when there seems to be something bigger going on. I think some of those details are important. But the thing that really grabbed my attention in all of the conversation is that he is being hailed as a type of hero, that there is something that people are seeing in this man that is drawing them to him and drawing them to his actions as the alleged assassin of the CEO of United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. This happened on December 4th. So what I want to do, just in case people are listening to this podcast or watching over on YouTube and are not familiar with the details, I want to bring in a Fox News clip here where you get a lot of information from the reporter who's on site at the McDonald's where he was apprehended in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Just a bizarre, I don't know. Again, I'm trying to just Just the facts, ma'am.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's so much you can, and then you get into it, it's like, oh no, that's conspiracy.
You're down a rabbit trail. You've gone,
but there's a
through
lot
the
of
looking
questions.
glass.
There's a lot of questions.
I have many of them, and maybe one day I will trust you people enough to share some of those thoughts. As it is today, let's just go with the facts, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. This is from Fox News. We're going to start and stop this, kind of have a conversation around some of those details, but then ultimately getting to the place that we want to ask the question, what is a hero? How are we defining our heroes? So we're going to listen to the details, listen to a little bit of the background, and then listen to some of those sub-stories that have come out as a result of this murderer making national headlines. Here we go.
Story you were covering just a month ago, that was the election, and now you have this one, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a remarkable story it is. Good morning, Dana. Behind me is that Altoona, Pennsylvania McDonald's where this 5-day nationwide manhunt came to an end. 26-year-old Luigi Mangion was seated in the back of the restaurant eating, looking at a laptop when he was arrested at about 9:15 in the morning. He was wearing a blue medical mask and a beanie. But yet, a customer recognized him, grew suspicious, told a McDonald's employee who then called 911. And when police arrived here at this McDonald's, they asked Mangion to pull down his mask. And that's when officers say they immediately recognized him as the suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. When they asked if he had been to New York recently, Mangion apparently became quiet and started to shake. Mangion then gave police a fake ID, the same New Jersey fake ID used by Brian Thompson's shooter to check into a hostel in Manhattan. When asked why he lied about his name, he told police, quote, "I clearly should not have." He also had a loaded 3D printed ghost gun pistol, a 3D silencer, $10,000 in cash, including $2,000 in foreign currency, a U.S. passport, and a Faraday book bag capable of blocking electronic signals. He also had a 3-page handwritten document about the ill will he held toward corporate America. The Associated Press is now reporting that that document had a line from Mangion claiming he acted alone. The shooting had to be done. Quote, "These parasites simply had it coming."
Okay, let me just pause there. So this idea that this 26-year-old acted alone, and we'll go back to the clip, kind of get a little bit of background. You'll see why I'm so skeptical about this. But again, and I want to stay on track with what I have on my heart burden to talk about today, but some of the details you just can't ignore. So you've got a 26-year-old who was last heard from by his family on November the 18th. And then he shows up at a New York hostel on November the 24th. And he's at a New York hostel until December the 4th, at which point he then guns down the CEO of United Healthcare. His mother apparently had filed a missing persons report, hadn't seen him since November 18th. He was not responding to his friends reaching out to him. He just goes missing. In that space that he goes missing, he decides that he is going to assassinate the CEO of United Healthcare. The thing that's crazy to me about this, and I know that people have to be asking these questions. Now, no doubt, this is a very smart individual, okay? Top of his class, valedictorian in his high school, $40,000 a year for his high school, undergrad and graduate school in like computer science, computer engineering, something like that. I mean, just big brain, okay? Still, I think there are some questions that we have to ask. If Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of United Healthcare, and we know that as a part of their corporate package, he has 24/7 security. He's leaving the hotel where he was slated to give a talk about the, successful year that United Healthcare has had. Again, side conversation, okay? And right as he is exiting that hotel, the assassin knows the direction that he's going to be traveling in. Why do I say that? Because he knows that he needs to be behind him. So he knows that he's going to exit the hotel and turn to the right or turn to the left, but he's going to exit the hotel, turn to the right. And so then I need to be left of him as he's exiting so that I'm behind him. He also knows that his security detail is not going to be with him when he's exiting on this particular morning at this particular time.
How?
So when people tell me that, he acted alone, okay, thanks, Fox. And I really want to believe that. That's just really difficult for me. Okay. And then you say, well, how did this kid is this young 26-year-old, he's Gen Z. How did this Gen Z become radicalized? And then how does he decide that Brian Thompson has got to die as a result of that radicalization? I mean, look, there are just some questions there. But in the meantime, and we'll go back to Fox News, go back to that clip there. In the meantime, people are hailing this kid as a hero. And let me not say kid, he's not 7. He's a 26-year-old grown man. Okay.
That's right.
And I want to say, listen, and I'm trying to be very careful here because I want to say that he's responsible for his actions. Although I will tell you just point blank, I have some questions about that.
It seems like there were more things involved than just a lone person who had this bad experience. And because the way that it all happened, he knew where to be and all this kind of stuff. Man, it's just too perfect. It's too, and I would say this, we know that the healthcare system can be messed up. And I see people who are celebrating this, and that's wrong, but I know that this healthcare system could be messed up, but this is not the way we fix things.
No, it's absolutely not.
It's absolutely
not. And I don't think you mean it this way too, when you say there are people who are celebrating this and it's wrong, but it's wrong.
It's wrong.
Right?
Period.
There's no, so in my mind, and I don't think you mean it this way at all.
And what I mean is, I was watching something today, and it was showing how United Healthcare is number one in rejecting people's
denying
coverage.
their claims. Yes.
And so there have to be a lot of upset people.
Yes.
By that, and people have died. So that's true. But at the same time, you can't be a vigilante.
See, that's the space that I want to hang out in. That's the space that I want to hang out in, because I believe that, yes, there are a lot of people who are saying, we've had claims denied and we've got a healthcare industry that makes its money off of ignoring people, people who are paying into an industry that they expect to be there for them when they need it. Right. So I want to step into that space and I want to say that's seductive, right? And so what's the seduction in it? The seduction is I'm justified in my hatred. Right. I'm justified in the evil thoughts that I have percolating in my mind. But as a Christian, what I want to say is, look, we have put to death all of those acts of the flesh, all of that sin. We have said no to that. We have said yes to the resurrecting power of Jesus Christ in our life, that we can deny ourselves. We can say, you know what, this is not right, but I trust in and I believe in the God of justice, real justice.
Amen.
I trust in and I believe in the God of justice. And I feel like that's where, as Christians, man, we want to run into that with that light, with that torch that says, no, man, the Lord says, vengeance is mine and I will repay. Now, if you're in the world, okay, these kinds of conversations, I expect them to have a conversation that rejects God. But I would caution Christians and say, man, as you're listening to the conversation, don't let that massage your heart and mind. Don't let that kind of he just kept biggering and bigger. No, we step back and we say, we agree with God that God, who sees everything happening all the time in the world, that he sees the wickedness that is among us, and he will in no way clear the guilty. The guilty will not go unpunished. And so we have to hold on to that. We have to accept that. We have to believe that as Bible believing Christians.
Yes.
So go ahead, Will the Great.
No, I was going to say what we're dealing with is lawlessness.
Yes.
It's a spirit. It's pervasive throughout our country, in different ways. And this is just another iteration of lawlessness, to take this into your own hands and to say, oh, well, I know how to fix this. And there's the talks of him having back surgery and things like that. And, all this stuff. But man, again, that's lawless to think, okay, let's cut this man down. That's not of God at all.
That's not how we operate. And so you add to that, you've got the details. And maybe what I want to do is I want to go to a different clip. We may go back to the Fox News clip. And really, I pulled that for background details, just for people to have an understanding. But it's not sort of like the full thrust of what I want to talk about. So let me skip. And then if we have time at the end of the podcast, I'll go back to some of those details. The thing that has been disturbing to me is to see the information that is being shared, some of it taken from TikTok and being shared on X, that people are like, oh, wait a minute, this guy is a hero. And if you think there's an exaggeration, of course, we want to bring in some of the receipts. So here is a clip from Morning Wire. I was listening to this morning, and you've got Cabot Phillips, who is a reporter for Morning Wire, and he's talking about how Luigi Mangione, that's a difficult name for me to say back to, I probably said the last name wrong. But anyway, how he's being seen as a type of hero. Want to play that clip and then want to show you the receipts. I mean, it's sickening to think about. Here we go.
While a large chunk of the country was obviously horrified by the murder, it's undeniable that for many others, he's taken on a sort of cult hero status. Mangione's Instagram account, for example, was flooded with thousands and thousands of supportive messages praising him, calling him a brave martyr for taking on the healthcare industry. And on multiple social media platforms, including X and TikTok, all day long yesterday, the hashtag #FreeLuigi was trending. Here's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro responding to the support for Mangione.
In a civil society, we are all less safe when ideologues engage in vigilante justice. In some dark corners, this killer is being hailed as a hero. Hear me on this. He is no hero.
100% agree. 100%. We are not safe if we live in a society where people who just take matters into their own hands to the extent that they take people's lives recklessly in the manner that this man did, none of us is safe. Like, not one person is safe when you try to say that any type of lawlessness is something that should be celebrated. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so when I listen to that and I listen to that clip from Morning Wire where they're talking about how he's being hailed as a hero, you know, people would hear that and they would say, I don't know if that's true. You know, are we just taking some of these kind of fringe people, taking these people who are just too much online and they need to come off, and then adding to that and saying that that's everybody's common understanding? Well, Piers Morgan had a guest on who, and let me get this woman's official title here, former Washington Post tech reporter Taylor Lorenz, who basically said that she felt joy at learning about the assassination, the murder, the cold-blooded murder of CEO for United Healthcare, Brian Thompson. I mean, so that's not just the fringe. That's just not the, you know, the ogres in the basement typing out that they love this. No, these are people who have platforms who are talking about this as if sort of this is like the way of the future. Right. This is the way we should go.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy when you think about it, and for this stuff to be celebrated, and because you'll hear it in the clip, you know, and I applaud Piers Morgan for, you know, pushing back on
absolutely
her. But this mindset is a mindset of lawlessness, just like we said, and you cannot do these type of things in response to something that you feel it's unjust. You know, that's not the way we operate.
So here's Piers Morgan. This conversation is not only about Luigi Mangione, but it's also about Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny. So there's a little bit of overlap in that. But here is the place where you get to where he then turns his attention to the people who have made this assassin, this cold-blooded murderer, have made him a hero. Here we go.
This issue of Brian Thompson, one of the top healthcare executives in the country. I'm just curious why your first reaction would be to his cold-blooded execution. And people wonder why we want these executives dead. And then you later commented when people were giving you a lot of blowback, I'm not alone, you said. Healthcare executive down with party balloons was on a next post that you commented on. Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left where, you know, you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, you know, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again...
We're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Thousands of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
Well, why not?
And
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the
You seem
system.
to find the whole thing hilarious.
I find your question funny.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year and because they are denied life-saving healthcare from people like the CEO. Now, I want to fix the system. You're right. We shouldn't be going around shooting each other with vigilante justice. No. I think that it is a good thing that this murder has led to America, or really the media elites and politicians in this country paying attention to this issue for the first time. You mentioned you couldn't understand why somebody would feel this reaction when they watched a CEO die. It's because you have not dealt, it sounds like, with the American healthcare system in the way that millions of other Americans have.
Now, let me just pause for a second, because what she is suggesting is that if you've been burned by, the American healthcare system, then you should be glad that someone has been murdered in cold blood, that it draws attention to the American healthcare system. It's amazing to me how it seems like our culture, I don't know if life imitates art or if art imitates life. I don't know how this all works, but it's very much John Q-ish. It really is. Like, do you remember the Will Smith movie where his son needed a heart transplant? They were denied that. And then I remember this from back in the day. I remember the wife like, you need to do something. You need to, and he takes a whole hospital hostage and is like, people are going to start dying until my son receives a heart. Now, what happens in that type of scenario? You face this incredible conflict. And why do you face a conflict? Because you're like, man, Will Smith is the good bad guy. In this movie, the little boy needs a heart. He's been denied his right to have a heart. So what is Will Smith gonna do? As John Q, as the main character, what is he gonna do? He's gonna use his heart, his strong heart of a father to secure one for his son. And so what does that do? That creates a cognitive dissonance where we're like, we want the little boy to have a heart, and we also want Will Smith to come out alive.
Why
like
am I seeing Denzel Washington in my mind?
It was Will Smith.
It was Will Smith.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was John Q.
Yeah. Your point stands, like, for real. That's exactly what it is, And so it's crazy to think that people can find a reason to celebrate in this. And it's something like he put up the footage of the man walking behind the CEO, and he's like, we're watching the footage. And
so
how can you look at that and say, yeah, stick it to him?
There's
like,
no way.
Like, really?
There's no way.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, look, there's look, and let me make sure that I say this before we move too far away from this conversation. Okay. If we don't have a definition of what a hero is rooted in the character of God, then we don't have a definition of a hero. Right. We really just don't. And so if the definition of a hero is not rooted in that which is good and right and true, then that's not a hero. It's not a hero. It's not good. It's not right. And it's not true. And so I don't care how you would define someone as, good looking or doing a solid for the common good. If he is doing that against the knowledge of God, then it is not good. I want to take a minute here to say thanks to Accountable to You for sponsoring this program. It's so important that when we are online, when our kids are online, that they are protected. And you can't possibly do it all as a parent. You can't possibly do it all as a ministry administrator. You need someone to come alongside you and help you keep eyes on where everyone's trafficking, where everyone's spending their time online. And so Accountable to You wants to help you in that. This is the question: is your smartphone a tool in the service of Christ or a minefield of distractions and temptations with soul-killing seductions just a few taps away, our families and churches must embrace biblical accountability on our digital devices. Accountable to You makes transparency easy on all your family's devices by sharing app usage and detailed browsing history, including incognito mode with your spouse or parent or chosen accountability partner. Accountable to You helps your family to proactively guard against temptation so you can live with integrity for God's glory. Learn more and try it for free at accountable2you.com/cultureproof. That's accountable, the number 2, YOU.com. Accountable2you.com/cultureproof. All right, just as we're kind of landing this and looking at where we are, and we talk about the confusion that exists in our culture, at the same time that we are talking about making a hero out of someone who just murdered someone in cold blood, there was a question about Daniel Penny and his coming to the rescue of people on a subway who felt their life was in danger, that their lives were at risk because of someone who, through mental illness, like Jordan Neely he was schizophrenic. He was under the influence of drugs. All of that is well documented. And this week, Daniel Penny was acquitted of manslaughter. He was acquitted of let me get the exact charges here, because I said manslaughter. That was the original charge that they tried to stick to him and ultimately could not stick that charge to him. Here we go. The Daniel Penny verdict has been met with threats by at least one high-profile activist hoping he would be convicted of killing Jordan Neely, who was threatening people on a New York City subway train last year after Penny was found not guilty of the criminally negligent homicide of Neely. The founder of Black Lives Matter of Greater New York, Hawk Newsome, called on Black people to attack white people in the city. And that's exactly where I want to go. So again, you've got a man who was on a subway,
Oh my goodness,
who observed that people's lives were in danger. And by the way, people of color, okay? Because we have made this an issue of some sort of partiality. I'm telling you, our culture and our society is really messed up. And so this man springs into action to subdue this individual who is yelling out murderous threats at the people on the subway. And what is BLM saying? BLM is saying, you know what? We need more vigilantes. Again, why? Because we don't know how to define our heroes. We don't know what is good and what is right and what is true. And look, and I am not advocating for the death of Jordan Neely. I'm not advocating for that. I want people to understand. But what I am saying is that when you have a person like Daniel Penny who steps in to say, hey, wait, people are in danger. People are in imminent danger. I've got to do something. And the one who is likely to commit the crime is right here. Please understand me. Okay. That is what we historically call heroism. That's what we historically called heroism. When the hero stepped in to do the difficult thing, to save the many. Now, look, I understand if you want that to be Luigi Mangione, okay, then you've got some serious issues and some conflict with the one in whose image you have been made. But we cannot lose sight of what the Bible describes as the biblical character of God. And when we root our actions in the knowledge of who he is, then we don't call for the unjust murder of people. I do not believe that Daniel Penny murdered Jordan Neely. I believe that he subdued him. And did he hold him longer than he should have? That's up for debate. And obviously a jury said, no, he wasn't negligent in that he believed that he was restraining this man so that people would not be harmed on the subway, something that law enforcement should have been there to do, by the way. Instead of him being celebrated as a hero for the lives that he potentially saved on that day, here is what BLM is calling for. Listen.
We need some Black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
That's kind of not what happened, though.
Right.
It wasn't just, black people on the subway
Being
just
loud.
talking and being loud and just, having a good time. And then all of a sudden the white man jumped on them and was like, you know what? You don't have the right to talk. You don't have the right to. That's kind of not what happened. You had a mentally disturbed individual whose family knew that he was mentally disturbed, also who had drugs in his system, who was yelling out murderous threats to the people who were on the subway. Those people themselves testified that they felt threatened by his presence, that they were afraid. And then you have Daniel Penny, who springs into action, to save them.
Yeah, that's seen as toxic today. That's seen.
Well, we need more of that
as toxic and oppressive.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because now, what do we want in society? We want the men to stand back and to be like, oh, well, I don't want to, get in trouble for this. I'm just going to kind of just stay back and lay back. What he did was what a hero would do.
That's what I believe. And that's the juxtaposition.
That's exactly what he did.
That's what I don't want to live in a society where men are weak and frail. Like I don't want to live in a society where men don't know what it looks like to really protect people directly. Right. Mm-hmm. Like not this cowardice act of shooting someone in the back. Do you understand what I'm saying? After you've had your Starbucks,
and that's a hero.
Like I don't want that. I don't want the person who just grabbed their Starbucks and their granola bar and then shoots someone in the back like a coward and then rides off on their electric because you want to be environmentally conscious bike. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want to live in a society where we call that a hero, but Daniel Penny, we say that he is some sort of a vigilante. No, I'm not confused about what a hero is. And I think that when we resist all of these conversations and even the attempts to normalize wickedness in our hearts and in our minds, that we would then be rooting for the villain. When we resist those things, we will go back to recognizing that, hey, we actually do know what a hero is. We know, look, and I want to leave. I was thinking about this particular passage found in Romans chapter 3. And again, this is, my goodness, the book of Romans where, the apostle Paul, by the Spirit of God, he lays out God's case against humanity, right? Like we are with really, truly, there's no defense that we could possibly have because we are all guilty. We all deserve the judgment of God. And again, when you get to Romans chapter 3, the apostle Paul is laying out again what we're guilty of. He did it in Romans chapter 1. And here you get to Romans chapter 3. And again, he goes back to this. And I want to start at verse 10. The Bible says, as it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. There is none who does good. There is not even one. And then verse 13, their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips. Verse 14, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. That's the case that God has against us. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's the case that God has against us. I can't imagine that Daniel Penny, when he got onto the subway a year ago, that he decided, this day I'm going to kill somebody.
Right.
Versus the alleged assassin of the United Healthcare CEO who woke up that morning that today was the day that I'm going to kill someone. Guys, if we can't see the difference between those two scenarios, if we don't know how to pick our heroes, then we are in danger. Yeah. And I don't mean that to be hyperbolic. We are in danger. We don't live in a safe society when we've lost our ability to define heroes. Don't lose your ability to define heroes. Teach your kids what a hero is and root that in the character and the nature of God. When we resist those cultural trends that rival the truth, we remain culture proof. Until next time, Lord willing.
God bless.